Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Shōgun Season 1, Episode 6. Another great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I want to talk about the fact is that I couldn't quite make it out because I only saw the scene once, but it wasn't until afterwards where I was like, oh, okay, I saw the scene again online, was the whole situation of the earthquake at the end of last episode, how much devastation it was. I didn't realize, like, oh, it wasn't just the land that was, it was like, no, like, a good chunk of Toranaga's army is down there. So I was like, ah, cool, that's not good. So yeah, lost, who knows how many, by the end of the episode you see like, oh, he's still got a good meaty army, but you are talking about like everyone that serves, basically every region it's going to be coming together against you. There's 5 regions all with their own armies, kind of 4 now, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So all of their armies amassed against you, so it's like one army against probably 4 other armies that are probably roughly the same size, if not bigger. You know, plus you lost a lot of your own forces too, so there's a lot in that. But, you know, Toranaga's bringing up the whole fact of kind of what life is. So, like, death is not something to be frowned upon because death means that's a life that was lived. Death is proof that you were alive, so let's honor those who are dead and keep moving on. And at the same time, he ends up rewarding John for saving his life last episode. So gives him, so I don't know if those are the swords from Fuji that Fuji had given to that John gave to Toranaga last episode, or were those new swords? I'm unclear, but it's like now, I love how the buck keeps passing. Like, Yabushige thought, like, oh, the regiment was going to be his, but it was given to Omi. And now Omi was so hyped about it last episode. But now that's, well, to be fair, that got diminished because Yabushige is like, no. You don't have, that isn't yours. It's mine. Toranaga saying you can lead it, but it's still mine. How are you going to give me something that's mine? But that all got snatched away from them. And now it's in John's hands. He's the one leading that regiment now. Which part of me had wondered, is that Toranaga's way to kind of screw Omi over? Because, you know, once again, he talked to Yabushige last episode about Omi being the one that convinced Yabushige to do what he did against... Omi's the one that convinced Toranaga's son to kill and make his move against Jozen like he did. So, but he kind of made it seem like the Yabushige, no, your son, he did something. That's why I was also bringing up last episode, like, you're so okay with what Omi did, but you're pissed at your own kid. Like, that's why I'm like, I don't know if this was meant to be a slight against Yabushige and Omi. I didn't talk about it last episode, but I thought I had last episode was, I was curious if Toranaga was doing that, so he pit them against each other. It's like, you're both, like, sneaky, and you're both, like, got your own plans and machinations, so I wonder if he's trying to pit them against each other type of situation. That was what I was curious about, so maybe that's supposed to incite this even more. To be fair, it's like, John did save his life yet again, so it's like, right, I'm a reward you, and this is the best way I can reward you, especially considering you're the one that's been training us in this, like capacity anyway, so it makes a lot of sense for you to lead the regiment, which, obviously, John has no interest in this. In fact, he still wants to go back home. And he's talking to Toranaga about, right, he goes with Mariko, it's like, okay, we can actually attack the black ship, because attacking the black ship will screw up trade, because obviously the Portuguese are super in line with Ono and Kiyama. I mean, the Christian regent. So it's like, if you, like, remove trade from them, you hamper your enemies. But Toranaga looks at it as like, yeah, but I can also get them as potential allies. Plus, also, the Portuguese have never been, like, bad to me. But obviously, they're enemies to the English. So it's like, right, they're violent when you need to wipe them out. I even love Mariko being like she's trying to interject, but Toranaga's like, whoa, what's going on here? Last thing I need is beef between my interpreter and, like, the Ajin. I don't need that. Like, do your job properly. Like, what's going on between you two? And Mariko is like, nothing. It's like, she tries to be as, like, front-facing as possible, but it's like, no, like, her own personal feelings are in the mix of this. And it's because John even tries to be spiteful. It's like, no, you said that there's nothing between us, so how about you continue playing the role of translator and just translate what I said then, you know? Especially because just before they got there into this whole problem. She just saw her husband because he bows before Toranaga. Buntaro is apologizing for what happened. And even Toranaga was like, if you got such an issue, divorce her. And now we really get some insight into why Buntaro is the way that he is. Because for Toda, it's a situation of, he's like, she should be grateful to me. I saved her life. If she wasn't married to me, if it wasn't for me, she would have been executed with the rest of her family. But what does she do? She spites me. Every year she asks for death. She's been so icy and stuff like that, which in itself is like enough to piss you off. Because first and foremost, you've always been distant to me, even though I've been the one that's cared for you. But you're a constant reminder of what she lost, that she has to live with the shame and just the heartache and pain every day for 16 years of, I can't be with my family. I'm the only one. My mom is dead. My dad is dead. My entire family, all my siblings are gone. I'm the only one left in my bloodline, and I can't even choose death. Like, you keep saving me. So they have this back and forth resentful relationship. She hates him for letting her live. He despises her for wanting to die all the time. So it's like this, it just led to such heavy animosity. But what adds even more fuel to the fire, he's not oblivious to it. He recognizes how she is around John. It's like, she's always been icy to me. To be fair, you have such complicated history. Like, there's never, like, she's not going to be grateful to live. That's why she wants to die every day. Like, that's how she, like, finally frees herself of this pain that's been holding her down for, once again, 16 years, over a decade and a half. So it's understandable. And with John, there's none of that baggage. In fact, she found camaraderie in the fact that him seeking freedom, and she found freedom, and she feels like a sense of freedom with him, you know? So it's understandable, but it also, like, adds to why, like, Toda, like, hates John. I mean, he already had beef with him of, like, you're a barbarian, yada, yada, yada. I had to live in the same household as you. So, yeah. I'm curious what the rules are of divorce, specifically in this point in time in Japan, for Toranaga to be like, if you have such an issue, divorce her then. Because it can't be, Mariko, I think women aren't in a position to be like, oh, I want a divorce. It don't work like that. The husband has to be the one that calls for the divorce type of situation. But also her being a Christian, I don't know if she'd be all about, I mean, there's the Japanese culture of it all, so I don't know how, I don't want to talk about Japan present day, because I don't know enough about Japanese society on that front to kind of, know enough about, like, relationship stuff. But, like, back then, like, probably, like, divorcing doesn't seem like it's, I mean, maybe it's a lot more acceptable than I thought it would be. I guess in general, my thought was like, oh, you go back far enough in history, we probably don't have to go that far back enough in history, where it's just like, yeah, divorce now is heavily frowned upon it. But also you add in the religious element of her, like, beliefs, like, would she, like, want divorce? Like, that's probably also another reason why she stays behind, so that she stays in a relationship. But either way, it's all a murky, messy situation. But Toranaga told Buntaro, it's like, yeah, like, you just stay away from her for like 7 days. So we'll see what ends up happening on that front. But speaking of Mariko, we learned a lot of interesting things. First and foremost, her and Ochiba have known each other for a very long time. In fact, they were, like, really good friends, like childhood friends, when they met when they were kids, like 22 years ago, and they hit it off. And then we find out, well, this is also back before she even was Ochiba. She was Ruri. So it's also, it adds more fuel to her fire of, like, oh, not only did she lose everything because her father is the leader that Mariko's father killed all those years ago. So not only did she lose her father, she had to run away from, like, Kyoto. And then it led to her life falling out the way it did. She ended up having to change her name to Ochiba. She basically had to, like, everything that tied her to who she was gone. Then you add in she was given to the Taiko because the only way she can find a way in this world was being a consort to him and to give him a child, because I guess, is she the Taiko's wife? Is that who she is? Because she is held in such reverence that I'm like, I didn't realize that's who she was. But I guess I should have known. But it's like, yeah, she wasn't the Taiko's wife. She was one of his consorts. In fact, she's the only one to ever give him an heir. So that's why Ochiba's in the position that she's in, why she carries such weight. Even though that's kind of led to some fallout in its own right, because where the Portuguese currently stand, they can't really interact with their allyship with the regents. They've kind of been put on the outskirts, and like the head priest dude is like, yeah, like that Ochiba woman can't be running things, but Martine's like, no, you underestimate her. Like there's more to her than that. In fact, he's the one saying like we should join with Toranaga like in this situation, but even the guy's like, I don't get why do you side with Toranaga? Like, why do you like him so much? It's like, what we'll do is we'll let this situation play out, and then when it's all said and done, we'll kind of, repair potentially any relationship with Toranaga. It's kind of like, now let's join with him now. Let's kind of let things kind of play out now, because obviously everything at Osaka has been shut down because there's a word, oh my god, we gotta like batten down the hatches because Toranaga is going to come here, then kill the heir. So the whole point is to spread this propaganda so that the other regents, they're perceived like, oh, well, the regents probably buy into the BS to some extent, but not really. They smell the BS in the air, but the long and short of it, they are going to side with Ishido against Toranaga, and they're just going to keep this narrative going. I'm curious how much of that is Ishido and how much of that is like Ochiba. She did say like, right, the regents, the council serve me now. So, but yeah, like I said, when you look back on her life, you understand why she got to where she is. Even Ishido's like, why do you hate Toranaga as much as you do? And it's this interesting development, and this is the thing about Toranaga where it's like, and especially because they brought back that storyline element of, right, there's three hearts, the one in your head, the one in your chest, and the one you keep hidden away, that you can't let anyone know. Ochiba's like, I know like, no one can see it, no one knows or sees his secret heart. I do. Toranaga, like, Mariko's dad might have killed my father, but that's only because Toranaga was there whispering. He is the sly fox that he is, so he was whispering in his ears. Like, I mean, that's the thing of, is her father as terrible as everyone made him out to be? Or at least Mariko believed him to be. Other people believed him to be the reason why her father killed him. But it's like, was that just more manipulation on Toranaga's part? Because like, you don't know if it's true or not, because there's a conversation that comes up this episode of, oh, you should be the Shōgun again, and he's telling his son, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want power, don't want honor. But it's like, is that bullshit? He turned down the Taiko a year ago when the Taiko was like, hey, you should be the sole regent, but he's like, no, that's just going to put a target on me and your son's back, so I don't want that. And it's a good, wise choice that shows you're not obsessed with power. But it's like, Toranaga knows how to be sly. Like, how much of that is true and how much of it is just him playing. You don't, once again, the secret heart thing, other than Ochiba, we don't know what's in his heart, really. Like, this could all be bullshit. He plays like the honorable leader, but he's like, he's got a blade pointed to everyone's back, ready to strike at any moment type of situation. He is that sly and tactful, so it's unclear where Toranaga's heart lies, where his intentions lie. Like, we don't, because they paid him as like he's the good guy, like everyone else amongst the regents are kind of the bad guys. But maybe it's a situation of like, probably you get so caught up in things being so black and white of like good and evil, like people aren't just one way or another. People are an amalgamation of the two. People are capable of good, people are capable of evil. There's so much of a gray area when it comes to the human condition. That's where I'm like, I don't know if that's just like my prejudice of coming into this thinking like, oh, Toranaga seems like he's a good guy, but I did have my suspicions, and this just makes you go, yeah, like, not unless Ochiba doesn't understand the situation, but I don't know. We did see at one point, like, when some people were being executed, Mariko's dad wanted to do something, but Toranaga was like, don't do anything, just wait for your moment. Because he's the one that held out, like, it is interesting, like, Mariko's dad is the one who did this terrible thing and lost everything. Toranaga's, for the most part, is still alive and thriving. So it does seem like I used you so I don't have to suffer the ramification. You're all pawns on this chessboard to me. Whether he really feels that way or not, Ochiba definitely makes it seem she feels like he's that way. Which, speaking of her, like, we found out all that she had to kind of go through. She was like, do you know how I ended up, like, hundreds, there were over 100 consorts, and not a single one of them could give the Taiko a child. And it's like, Dayon ended up giving me like this bitter stuff so I could get pregnant. And it's like, you know how I did? I made fate look my direction, and then I basically scratched out its eyes. Basically, it's like fate had its own determination of what my life was going to be, the path I'm supposed to go down, and I decided, no, I'm going to take my life by the reins and then decide my own fate. You know, I won't let fate dictate so much, because a lot does seem like it is the cards you're dealt, whether it's Mariko's circumstance. She accepts them as the cards I'm dealt. Don't mean I have to like them, whereas Ochiba's like, I'm going to take my life by the reins, my fate by the reins, and decide my own course. And hence what's sitting her down this path. It is kind of wild that Ochiba had to sit there and watch a play that was basically a reenactment of her and the Taiko, which is got to be so weird and awkward, because we saw the first time they hooked up how she was obviously super not into it. It was just kind of the situation she was forced into, and just kind of like him on top of her having to look the other way and just kind of take it. Just like, Jesus. And she has to sit there and watch just like fantasized like play of their like union and stuff. It's like, Jesus. That's so weird. I don't know if that play, the earlier part we saw the guy with like, what's that spear type of weapon called again? I always forget it. It's not like a naginata or something like that, is it? I can't remember. And the sword, and then like the guy with the naginata like died. I'm wondering if that supposed to be like her dad versus Mariko's dad, and that was her dad getting, maybe not. I don't know. Because it's so, like, it seems like it's probably like let's honor her by telling her story. I mean, it's more about the Taiko story, which she's a part of, which I think is kind of an interesting perspective of, you know, it's like, once again, her taking the reins of her own life. It's like, right, I've always been a character in someone else's story, which feels very poetic, because she's really stepped up as a character, because she was just like a little here, a little there, like sprinkled in very small amounts in the beginning half of the season, and now we're in the back half of the story. Now she's stepping up to kind of play the role of main antagonist to some extent. So it's interesting that it is like, oh yeah, like what was now someone else's story, this is my story now. So it feels very poetic that they have like constructed it like that. At least that's how I'm reading it, which I think is fascinating. They were bringing in a new Lord Ito, to kind of, you know, once again, they want to be the 5 regents again. That way they can vote on Toranaga and finally get rid of him. That's kind of what this is all supposed to be about. And when it's all said and done, though, when it comes down to the vote for Ito, Sugiyama's the only one who says no. Because he's like, I see this BS for what it is. Like, the fact of the matter is, like, this is just, like, you know, he won't support this, because he's like, Toranaga would never come after the Taiko's heir. I smell the BS coming up. We are all hostages. He's like, in fact, I will not vote on any of this, because I need to get Ito in so that they're able to vote on Toranaga's death. But Sugiyama's like, I'm not going to vote on this until the hostages are released. And Ishido's like, what hostage? What are you talking about? No one's here. He's like, BS. This is all horse shit. And then Ishido, because I'm assuming, because he was going to try and get the other to vote on getting rid of Sugiyama first, but Ishido handles it himself. I'm sure that was Ochiba's choice. Once again, he kind of serves at her beck and call now. But yeah, he ends up killing Sugiyama and all his people and his clan. It's like they're all dead. So you're not even taking his army. I mean, it looked like a shit ton of people died, but I mean, maybe you absorb whatever his army fell in line, but maybe they're all dead too. I don't know, but I love that Sugiyama went out swinging, being like, yo, so this is what it is. He's like, you're basically, you're playing the role of a politician. You were never really meant to be a regent. You're just playing politics. That's all you are, and that's all you'll ever be. You know, because Shido wants to be so much more, because it was actually this interesting point him and Ochiba had, where it's like, he looked up to the Taiko so much, because he's like, the Taiko represented to me someone with my background that basically I could find my way up. I could work my way up. And Ochiba kind of had like, not the same, like her story took her in a different direction when it came to everything. Once again, that conversation of fate. So it was just an interesting conversation between the two of them. So it's interesting to see the developments on the Osaka side of things, because Ono and Kiyama are going to fall in line. They already did. They voted with like, oh, let's bring Ito in, and now that Sugiyama's dead, they've cemented even more like, oh cool, we're definitely not going to turn against Ishido or Ochiba. I don't even know if they recognize like Ochiba's kind of the one that's really in charge. You know, Ishido is just, you know, a pawn in all of this. He will never be anything more than what, you know, he's just, like I said, a piece on the board to Ochiba in a lot of ways. And he kind of looks at, he's a piece on the board, not recognizing he's a piece on the chessboard type of situation. He looks at everyone else below him like, oh, look at all these pawns, not realizing that you know, you think yourself the king on the chessboard when in actuality you might just be a bishop or a knight at best. You know, might just be another pawn who doesn't recognize he's a pawn. You know, so either way, there's that. I want to circle over to Yabushige really quickly. I love that Yabushige, like, in the aftermath of them losing so many people after that earthquake and stuff, it's like, okay, so what are we going to do? Like, our army's in shambles, and Omi's like, I can't believe he gave the regiment. It's like, and Yabushige's like, really? You're tripping about that right now, nephew? Like, the fact of the matter is, our army is in shambles, and all you're worried about is one barbarian? And he looks to his, like, right-hand dude and is like, we might need to write up another will. I'm like, I love Yabushige. It's like, yeah, you kind of, it's like, yeah, we're about to go into a fruitless war, and you're just up here tripping about one barbarian. Doesn't mean anything. Who cares? Like, we're potentially about to die, especially because with our army in shambles, we don't stand a chance when it comes to a fight. So that ends up being because luckily Hiromatsu escaped Osaka and made his way to Toranaga and warned them about what was happening at the castle and stuff. And now they're trying to devise a plan, and they do have one. It's a contingency plan called Crimson Sky. It's meant to be a full-blown strike on Osaka. It's meant to be a strike on the castle. We kill everybody, all the regions and everything, and it all falls under one banner that's Toranaga's. And once again, his son's pushing like, oh, be the Shogun and everything, but it's like, yeah, it's too dangerous of a strike. Like, who's to say anyone will make it out? Because it's meant to be a Hail Mary type of move, but it might be their only means. If they kind of like, you cut off the head of the snakes, the body dies type of situation. So if you wipe everyone out in the castle, it kind of makes everything else kind of fall into place to some extent. It's meant to be that decisive strike. But it's too much of a gamble because there's no guarantee it'll work out. So Toranaga's like, I need another plan. I'd almost wondered if Omi was kind of making it suggest it. I took it this way, but maybe that's not the direction he was going. I almost wondered if he was asking Yabushige, like, we need to insert a regent to replace you, like get someone on the inner circle that's there. But I don't know if that was his plan. It seemed like that might have been what his plan was alluding to, but it's like, no, we don't have enough time. That would take too long, and with everything heading in the direction it is. Also, Yabushige, he wasn't specifically saying Yabushige, but I was assuming he was referenced Yabushige, especially because Yabushige is always looking for a situation to kind of side with Hoshido, but that's kind of all going down the drain after a combination of last episode, but more so like episode 4. But when it's all said and done, like, I don't know if anyone's going to be able to sway, and that's going to work in your favor, especially considering Ochiba is running things. Really quickly about that too, I forgot to mention, her and Mariko have not seen each other in so long. Probably like in the 16 years since her dad, like, she probably they haven't seen each other. Which is kind of sad, like, especially how close they were and just how fate kind of puts them on opposite sides, because she serves Toranaga, Ochiba's against Toranaga, and just their family history. Like, once again, she doesn't seem like she holds as much resentment for Mariko's dad, because it's like, your dad was just a pawn in Toranaga's game. So, but either way, there's also the situation with Mariko and John. Obviously, once again, things being in an awkward position they're in, because John continues to ask about wanting to leave Japan. Toranaga's not going to give him that, but it's like, right, I'll give you a consolation prize. I take him to the tea house, which is their brothel, and it's like, you know, basically get him situated with Lady Kiku, and when that's all said and done, maybe that'll kind of, you know, give him, kind of take his mind off of things, and he'll kind of more fall in line with what I want him to do, to serve me the way I want him to serve me. And it's like, yeah, Mariko, go with him. It's like, he needs a translator. But now you're like, does Toranaga know? Even later on, John's like, does Toranaga know about, you know, what happened? But she was like, nothing happened. I don't know there's nothing for Toranaga to know. But even she's wondering, does he know? I mean, I don't think Toda recognizes that something happened. I think Fuji might recognize that something happened. She might have picked up on that. But when it's all said and done, like, I don't think, like, Botoro does. I think it's just a situation of, mad that they seem close. I don't know for sure if anything's happened. Maybe he has his suspicions, but maybe not to the point Toranaga does. Maybe Toranaga's more sure than like Bontoro is. But either way, they set up with the lady who runs the tea house, and she wants a certain, like, oh, you want Lady Kiku? It's like, fine. It's going to cost you, like, pretty heavy, but it's like, she's really good. The ladies at my place are really, really good. Top notch. But I love Mariko getting that opportunity. Like, oh, no. This isn't for Lord Toranaga. No, this is for the Ajin. And the moment that lady's face shifted, and you can see Fuji kind of almost smiling, was like, yeah, you kind of throw a wrench in your whole thing. But I think it's interesting too, and maybe this is just me, because there's a whole conversation of like, right, the cups they use, a lot of their more finer plate stuff was destroyed during the earthquake. But if you keep noticing, they make such a point of showing how she puts it down. There's a lot of stuff in Japanese culture, especially when it comes to like teas and stuff, like the ceremony of it, of your placement, when you drink something, when you eat it. Like there's a lot of traditional elements to like a tea, not even just a ceremony, but even just like how you go about it. And they made such a point multiple times to showcase, hey, this is how she's placing it. And you even see how Mariko looks at it, because, and maybe this is, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but if you notice, like her cup has a very specific like marking on it, and she would always face the cup with the marking out. But if you look at Mariko's cup, there's no marking on it. All you just see is the blackness of the cup. So I'm like, I don't know if Mariko, maybe her cup is different from Mariko's, but it just almost felt like, and they kept focusing on it, it showed like kind of the disrespect, I guess. It's like she's not placing it a certain way. Once again, I could be easily reading too much into it, but they kept focusing on it. Like they showed her cup, and then they showed Mariko's cup, and then they showed her cup like one more time, so it does feel purposeful. I just don't know, once again, I don't know enough of Japanese culture, but like that's a little bit I've picked up from, once again, video games. I play a couple JRPGs, and there's a JRPG I play that kind of dived into like some of the tea ceremony elements of, you know, but that's in a more ceremonial sense. I think that still applies even in, I mean, this is kind of like a business transaction, so there is something ceremonial in that regard of like, yeah, we got to keep those ceremonies up. In a lot of capacities, but especially when we're in a very like, business orientated, asking for a favor type of situation. But also the lady, the madam of sorts of the green tea, or the not the green tea, sorry, the tea house or whatever, was kind of saying like, oh, Mariko, you should join as well. Like, she's kind of picking up those vibes too. Like, yeah, like there's discretion here. So, and it is a thing that Mariko and John notice, like, yeah, it's interesting. Like, all eyes are on us here, which I also love too, like tying in. Omi's not too happy about this because it's a reminder of just like every time I'm turning around, something is being taken from me. It's like, cool, the regiment was taken from me, given to John, and now John's going to be with my girl. Yes, Kiku's a lady of the night, but it is that situation of Omi cares for her. I guess he has, for the most part, has probably gotten her exclusively. So it's almost like unintentionally, or maybe Toranaga did it on purpose. Maybe he knows what Omi and Kiku's relationship is. So maybe he did that, like, is that an extra dig against Omi? Like taking something else that he is perceived to be his and giving it to John. Like, it feels intentional, even if maybe it was purely unintentional, but it is kind of another slight against Omi from Toranaga, which I think is so interesting. But he's not too happy about that. But Kiku's like, no, I'm yours. Like, you know, I'm just, it's a job. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. So there is some interesting conversations that happen with the whole Kiku of it all. First and foremost, that line that she was talking to, well, the girl said like, oh, elder sister, so I thought it was her literal sister, but it's like, no, it's her protege. It's like, right, the whole conversation of, oh, do you see where the flask used to be? It's like, oh, I see nothing. It's like, yes, presence can be felt in absence, which there's layers to that even though, hey, there's an absence here, that presence of what was there can be felt. It felt like that was supposed to be in line with where things are with John and Mariko, of like, you know, this kind of forbidden love and just kind of this forbiddenness that they're feeling about, well, their feelings towards each other. So especially, and she 100% did this on purpose when she's talking to John. She like positions herself in a way where, and the camera represents it too, where the way Mariko is positioned and where Kiku is positioned, everything Kiku's saying and Mariko's translating, but she eventually stops saying she and referring to Kiku and starts saying I during the translations. And so the way from John's point of view, because that's what the camera work is supposed to represent, that Kiku disappears in the background and it's more like Mariko takes over like the foreground because of the positioning of the camera, and supposed to be positioning of John because, you know, Mariko is all he's focused on right now. And so her saying all this stuff about what the tea house represents, that it's a place not only to get rid, it's not just for pleasure, it's to get rid of your disappointment. It's like, it's almost like the eightfold situation as well, but it's just like here you kind of come to forget, just in this one moment you kind of get to have whichever you want to, and it's just like, yeah, what's the one thing in his line sight, only thing that he's focused on in this moment is Mariko, because she's feeling it too, especially with all these like insinuations of, oh yeah, like this place, it can be dark if you want to, so whatever happens here can happen, but Mariko's like, no, I'm not gonna do that, even though like what she's feeling, John is feeling it too, but she's reserving herself even more because she's scared, I think, to take that leap because of what that could mean in the grand scheme of things. There's already so much shame associated with her family, and I think she just feels like it's weird, me like falling for him and having feelings for him. It's weird, but like I said, there's some camaraderie in that freedom. He's got stuff he wants to leave behind. She's got stuff she wants to leave behind, and that's the connection they have. You know, but it's like, you know, is that connection the only thing we have? I think is kind of another thing too, of like, you are this foreigner, you represent so much that I've never experienced in the world. Once again, a special type of freedom. But Mariko could have gone with Kiku and John, but she chose not to. But we actually don't know if they did anything. They probably did, because it's like, right, their eyes on them are everywhere, so John probably did it just for the sake of, well, he, you know, might have gotten riled up about Mariko, but it might also just be like, I gotta placate this situation, so I gotta see it through. Maybe he did nothing. I mean, to be fair, he didn't have a translator, so he wouldn't have been able to get that across to Kiku. So it's probably like, once again, too many eyes are on them, so he had to like, like he's, you know, servicing everyone. It's like, you know, himself, but also what Mariko would not really want, but kind of ask him to do, and what Toranaga wants him to do. So kind of let things lie where they lie in that regard. So Omi was not too happy in the aftermath of it. And you see the look at Kiku kind of having like this disappointed look, kind of almost like, I'm sorry. You're like I think in that moment, it's the first time he's probably ever looked at her that way. Like, not only disappointment, but it's just, I think in that moment, your profession kind of really stands out. Like, oh, like, now you're seeing me as a lady of the night rather than just Lady Kiku. You know, I think that's where it kind of gets interesting, you know. But one of the final scenes we got in this episode, too, was Toranaga and Mariko talking about everything. And, you know, it's like, oh, your dad, he wishes that you were a boy, because he's like, he always told me that, and Toranaga's like, I didn't never really understand that until now. Because there's a whole conversation about, like, right, because men can go off to war and stuff. And I love that conversation where Mariko's like, yes, because you're a man, it's easy to kind of have that perspective. Like, men go off to war for pride, for power, for this or for that. For a woman, war is war. That's all there is to it. Like, you rarely go into war kind of on your own, because you're kind of, if you go, like, any war that's fought is kind of because you're kind of put in that position, where it's like a man can decide to go to war for a multitude of reasons. War is just war. That's all there is on the line for a woman. I think it's, maybe I'm misinterpreting that perspective from Mariko, because I forgot what kind of incited all of that. It was like, I think Ochiba and her war, essentially, because like Toranaga was like, yeah, everyone's got their own war that they have to face, and that led to like Mariko giving her perspective as a woman on the whole concept of war, you know, and it's how it's different for a woman in comparison to a man. But it's like, oh yeah, and then the whole thing about her father, she's like, yeah, he should have married me better then. But it's like, oh, you don't know. Your father set all that up. And I kind of had a feeling at the time, it's like that look on his face of like, almost like, you don't understand why I'm doing this, but I do have my reasons. I think at that time I was thinking like, is it what? Because we know what he had planned in the future, and it turns out that's what Toranaga tells him. It's like, your father wanted you to be as far away when shit hit the fan. He knew what he was going to do and what he needed to do. It's also sad because it's like, doing what he did protected Mariko, but not the rest of his family, did not protect his wife or his other children. But it's also like, well, Mariko meant that much to him, but also like she's probably the oldest of her siblings, so she was in a position to be saved and no one else would, so that he could save at least some form of his family. And it's like he wanted you to be as far away from all of this to survive and then come and finish the war that he started. So, and that does seem like that's where it is all going to culminate, because of where Mariko currently stands and where Ochiba stands. Like, the past has a way of circling back around in a lot of ways through their lens as well. And Toranaga ends up being this middle piece in all of this story. So, when it's all said and done, though, hearing about Sugiyama's death, Toranaga's like, right, we kind of have no choice but to go to war. Like, Ishido will come after us eventually, so we're going through with the Crimson Sky plan. Let's see this through. So this Hail Mary plan, we'll see how it all plays out. Where the Portuguese fully fall in line. Once again, it seemed like we'll sit back and watch and wait type of situation. Not unless Martin ends up kind of going his own way, but I don't know if Toranaga's going to, like, whether or not John's plan of going after the black ship, whether there's going to be anything to that or not. Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to wait and see, but it's definitely going to be interesting to ultimately see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good